So when we talk about sepsis, there's always patient stories involved, and this is Andrew, who helped us a lot when we started working with early warning scores to raise awareness of sepsis. And I like telling a story, and I particularly like to tell a story to people who work in hospitals, because it's a story that unrolls outside hospitals, so everybody thinks it couldn't happen to us, till we look at our own practice and realize it does actually happen to us in the same way. So he's a primary school teacher in 2012, became unwell with fairly similar symptoms to the one that you described. He felt a bit under the weather. I think he had a bit of a cough, felt a bit shivery. He was a primary school teacher, so he didn't go to work to protect his school kids, took to his bed, and didn't feel so well, so rang the NHS helpline and said, "This sounds like the flu," which in all fairness it did. They said, "Stay in bed, drink some fluids, and hope, take some paracetamol, things should get better." And then the next day he got dizzy every time he stood up. Very similar story that I'm sure you can relate to. And his wife eventually said, "Look, you're not right." There's another man stuff, isn't it? It's the same story, you know, we just changed the name. And so she called the ambulance, and the ambulance came up, and they took him to Clwyd Hospital. It is the same story. Now he lives out in the sticks, so they took a bit of time, and in the back of the ambulance they were doing vital signs. So they took his heart rate, and it was a bit high, and they thought, well, you know, he's probably a bit nervous of being the first time in an ambulance, must be a bit nervous from that. They took his blood pressure, that was a bit low, but he's a long distance runner, he's a sportive guy. Sportive guys often have got low blood pressure, yeah. And then they had great difficulties to get his saturations. And they tried, and they couldn't get the saturation probe to work, and they thought it was a problem with the machine, which just couldn't get a reading, and they thought they probably needed to go back to the station after this transfer and get the machine reviewed. It was one of those horrible days when there was a queue in front of the hospital, so it took him a bit of time to get in, and then he was sat in a queue, and eventually somebody came and repeated his vital signs, and then things actually started to move really fast. So he was moved into resus. The intensive care team was called. He was taken out to the intensive care, intubated, and was within an hour back on the road to Leicester to receive extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, so treatment to give oxygen through a large blood vessel because his lungs couldn't cope and he had septic shock. Now he came back within a week and made a remarkable recovery, really in a very quick time. And this is, I think, his first 10K that he did in Chester after he recovered with his wife. But he was one of the patients who helped us to push news, and in fact he's probably the one person who's responsible that we're screening in ambulances now with news for sepsis. And we took his case, there was a lot of reflection on what happened in the ambulance, and without his help we would not have news in ambulances in Wales now. So I'm very much indebted to him.